Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie Rutherford. I work as an event coordinator for the Economics Career Office. I'm a second year in the college, and I will be moderating today's panel. Also on the line is our Eco Director, Jen Jones, who is managing the Zoom logistics for today. We're so excited to be hosting today's How I Got This Job Product Management and Software panel with UVA Econ alum Sano Nagai, who graduated in 2019, and Tal Dunne, who graduated in 2020. Thank you, Sano and Tal, for spending time with us today. So onto our panel. I wanted to approach this conversation in a chronological and kind of process-based way. So Tal and Sano, a lot of our conversation will center around the process of you guys getting your first jobs and then how you transitioned and adjusted into these roles. So first, for students, I would like you to introduce yourself by putting your name and your year and your major into the chat, just so we can get a general sense of who we have in here. And then our first question for our panelists is, could you give us a skim of your college resume, which can include some of the clubs you're in, jobs, internships. We can start with that and see kind of where that goes.
Cool. Well, I can go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Tal. I was a graduate of the University of Virginia in December of 2020, which seems like a year. Well, it was a year ago. It seems like many years ago now. But I studied economics and statistics when I was at UVA. During college, I did a bunch of different things. I was involved in Madison House. I did club swim, all the sort of standard UVA stuff that I'm sure you all know about now, that people do. I was involved with the CO. They were fantastic. Ms. Jones is a phenomenal resource. If you haven't reached out to Ms. Jones yet, you should definitely do that. She will help you. And yeah, as to my, my professional career throughout college during the summers, I had various different internships at different tech companies. It's kind of interesting. I'm an econ major. I'm not a software person. I'm not an engineer or anything like that, but I had a lot of experience in the technology industry, which has helped me kind of do well post-grad life now into my full-time career as a product manager here. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me. I think I hit everything, but Maggie, if I didn't, let me know.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sano. Like Maggie mentioned, I used to be a part of the ECO and used to put on these events myself. So I'm really excited to see that everyone is still participating and that this is something that can continue over Zoom. I graduated in May of 2019, so it's been a few years now. So I rarely missed the virtual classes, but definitely empathize. I've been working remote for basically 2 years now. But I graduated from the economics department. I actually did the distinguished major. So I worked really closely with all the econ professors there. And then I similarly do not have a very technical background, but when I was a first and second year, just dabbled very slightly in intro to CS, as a lot of people do, and thought that it was going to be something useful for me. And I really did like the technology aspect and I liked learning more about it. But ultimately ended up not really majoring in it, but kind of put myself out there by going to the engineering career fair my second year, which is really what spurred me jumping into a more technical or software field. I worked at Yext. I actually interned there as a technical project manager after my second year, and then I actually graduated early. So then my third year, I graduated and went back to Yext and was there for about a year before I moved over to my current position, which is very similar, but a little bit more consulting heavy as a solutions product consultant at Smartsheet. So I also kind of had a weird journey over to the technology sphere, but really enjoyed having the econ department as a resource for me along the way.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And I know you guys were both econ majors, but did end up kind of working in the software industry. So to aid student understanding before we kind of get into the job questions, how would you describe the software industry and like what does product management mean to you and what is your appeal to the industry?
I guess I'll go first again. So product management is a really interesting thing because it's really hard to describe what it is. And it's it's not something that you go to school for, right? Like I didn't go to school for product management. I went to school for economics where I studied and all that sort of stuff. And there's not really an undergraduate product management thing. Really what it is traditionally is it's a mid-career transition, right? So you have people who are software developers or who are data analysts or something like that, and they kind of want to move into a separate role and they transition into product management. They find themselves kind of falling into the roles, and that's kind of how I fell into the role as well. And I know I haven't defined it yet, but I'll define it using a story here. So my very first internship, I was a data analyst intern where we were crunching a bunch of numbers, doing a lot of data analytics on DC residential data, right? And I kind of fell into a role where I wasn't necessarily the one doing all the coding work to set up the data tables and all that sort of stuff, but I was the one who was talking to the users of that whatever we were working on, right? So I was talking to the salespeople, I was talking to the marketing people, and I was understanding what they wanted to get out of what we were working on. And so at the end of that internship, the boss of that internship was like, "Hey, you should check out product management." And I was like, "I don't know what that is, but sure." So then I started researching into product management. Really, product management is just that. It's defining what, for who, and why, right? So in the software development world, you have some really, really amazing people that can develop things, that can code things up really great, but they need to be told, what to code and why they should be coding something, specifically from a business standpoint, right? So you as a product manager are kind of that go-between for all these different departments, be it the actual development team, be it the sales team, be it the marketing team, be whoever at the company who needs to understand what you're working on and what needs to happen next. That's your role as a product manager. I'm sure you all have seen that Venn diagram where product is the interaction of UX or user experience, technology and business, and that really is the role. It's you're the ultimate generalist, as I call it. You are involved in nearly everything. Maybe you don't necessarily have the depth of knowledge that some of these specialists have. Like you're not a marketer, right? So you don't understand the entire bandwidth of what marketers do, but you have a wide berth of understanding across the entire company, and then you make decisions based off of that. So product management is really unique and really a great role to be in. I really have enjoyed it. Throughout my internships and throughout my career here, but I will let Sano answer now.
Sure. I honestly really empathize with all the points that you were talking about. I think specifically to hit on the point of being that translator, working really cross-functionally, whether that is between the engineering team. I myself in my ex position worked closely with the design team as well. And then for me, since I'm less internal product facing and a little bit more external, I consult with customers as well. It is really bringing in that client voice, really understanding what their needs are, gathering their requirements. And sometimes our clients aren't as technical as us, or really myself, obviously I'm not as technical as an engineer who's going to be in there coding. So being able to kind of abstract yourself from the nitty gritty and be able to deliver something to the customer that they can understand, that I can understand, and that the engineer can understand is really how I think of it in terms of you being that translator or go between the parties. And I think specifically for, there is a difference between product and project management, which a lot of people don't know, or they get into the field and then they realize it's a little bit different. Most of the time, product management is literally refining the product of a software company. So that might be a little bit more internal. You might be that point person that is mobilizing the engineering group and maybe potentially talking to customers, but it is a little bit more around how do you grow the product that your customer or that your software foundation is built on, versus project management might be a little bit different, where you might already have that product defined, or that product is obviously constantly evolving, but you as a project manager are kind of the person using that product as a tool in order to implement additional items or implement something different as a deliverable. So there's a little bit of a nuance, which I also learned once I got into project management. So wanted to just call it out if people were curious.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's also program management, which is another thing, but it all kind of boils down to exactly that. It's like product is what and why, and then project is kind of how, when, and then program is a little bit more complex because program is really dependent on the company, but program management is, I kind of think about it like, then what? What do we do from here? Where do we go? How do we grow the business? How do we grow the product? But yeah, that's a good call out. If you see project or product or program management, they are confusing. We get confused as professionals who are doing these jobs, so don't worry about it.
Thank you guys. That's actually very helpful even for me as well, the clarification. So at what point of your college career did you start your job or internship hunt? And then how did you find out about these jobs or internships? And how did the ECO or any other career offices help like with your process in getting these jobs?
I can go first this time, since I touched on it a little bit during my intro, but I think coming into UVA, I was very cognizant of a lot of people. It seems like a lot of people know what they want and that they're kind of prepared for that internship journey. And I felt like I was trying to keep up with that and definitely wanted to immerse myself in those career fairs or reading any of those kind of career handouts that people give out. So I was trying to get myself immersed in that pretty early on from my first year. But I think I really started, I guess, putting myself out there and being the person that's speaking at the career fairs my second year, because by that point I was kind of deciding whether or not I wanted to graduate early, and I knew I had to put myself out there. But it was very daunting. I, at that point, was also very involved in the econ department and had a pretty good relationship with some of my professors, and stumbled across basically the economics career office and started working with Jen, kind of on smaller projects in the beginning, but then took on more of a larger role a little bit later on. And that definitely helped me, one, kind of gain the confidence to speak at these career fairs because I was the one facilitating these events. But also, two, I got to see the different kinds of people that the econ department had graduated from the econ department, which helped me because at that point I was still trying to figure out, do I want to do something more econ related, like a research assistant or management consulting, or do I want to do something totally different? And it was really great getting to see like various people from all these different industries kind of coming through the eco and giving back to our department. So I think that was definitely a huge factor for me in terms of gaining the confidence to put myself out there and also that exposure. And then really that engineering career fair was a totally different place for me because I didn't really think of myself going to the engineering career fair, but by putting myself in that foreign situation, I think that's how I was lucky enough to stumble across Yext, which I had really never heard of before, and kind of talk to them, understand what is project management, what is product management, what is it, how is it able to apply my skills, maybe not as technical, but potentially client facing, and where can we go from there? And then ended up really loving my internship and going back there.
Yeah, echoing a lot of those same points. I cannot overstate the importance of talking to people. That is the most important thing. And actually, if you take a look at my resume or my background here, I started a job at a company called Brightspot in January of this year, and I recently took a new job at a company called Software AG. Now, it's not ideal to leave a job within the first year, right? Just because you want to stick it out and make sure you have that length on your resume. But another great thing, fourth years, the job market right now is absolutely insane. So you guys are entering a really, really good time to be going into the workforce where there's compensation is just through the roof and there's a lot of open opportunities. So you guys are in a great position. But the reason that I switched jobs is because of my networking and my capabilities to interact with people. And my very first job out of college at Brightspot, I got because I had talked to a product manager at Brightspot at a former career fair, right? So I know it's hard to put yourself on the line and go and talk to people. But at the end of the day, those are the connections that are going to end up getting you a job, right? If I hadn't talked to, her name was Catherine at Brightspot, my third year, I wouldn't have gotten the job at Brightspot right out of college, right? It's not only about talking to them, but it's forming a connection with them, because when then Catherine was interviewing me for that position, she recognized me. She said, "Hey, I saw you at that career fair." And then with my role at Software AG, again, I had an internship with them. So I was familiar with these teams and I kept in contact with them, and they got back to me a couple weeks back with a fantastic offer that I had a hard time saying no to. So I accepted a new position. So I cannot overstate the importance of networking, the importance of talking to people, especially in the technology industry, because for people like us who don't have engineering backgrounds, it's very hard to break in. Well, I wouldn't say it's very hard. It's difficult to break in. You have to be willing to put yourself out there and to say, hey, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to, jump through the hoops effectively at these career fairs in order to talk to people, in order to get the experience that I want to get. Because you're up against a lot of, you know, engineers who like really know coding, really know all this stuff. And it's up to you as someone who wants to break into the tech industry to kind of set yourself out and say, hey, if I form these connections, they'll be able to help me later on. And yes, Miss Jones just put rocketblocks in the chat. I did use Rocketblocks. I was one of the first UVA students to do the product management track at Rocketblocks. It's fantastic. If you guys are curious about product management, what it is, and like the interview questions, I definitely recommend it. The Economics Career Office provides you all access to Rocketblocks, not only for product management. I think there's also one for like management consulting and all that sort of stuff. So if you're interested, definitely check Rocketblocks out.
Yeah, that's a great segue, Tal, into like our next talking point, which is on networking. So kind of getting a little tactical, Tal, we can start with you, and then Sano, I'm sure you also have valuable input on this. But like, how did you specifically go about the networking? Like, how did you start? Did you do mostly emails, like through LinkedIn, phone calls? Can you like talk to us about that process and how you even just got started?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a pre-COVID world, it's different because, you know, I was able to see people face to face. So I think it's hard in a COVID world when we're all online, but it's definitely not impossible, right? But for me, the biggest thing was going to the career fairs, going to the engineering career fairs, going to the economics career fairs, all of them that got put on, and just researching the companies that were going to be there. What I did is I found anyone, because I knew I had an interest in this product management kind of world, I found any company that had a product internship, the project internship, some sort of technology space, fintech I looked at a lot. But anything that has a sort of product manager type position, I went and I talked to them. Not only when I was looking for an internship my third year, but also if they had full-time roles. So Brightspot doesn't have any internships for product management, but they had full-time roles. And I saw that on Handshake. So even though I had no intentions of, you know, going to work for Brightspot, going to be an intern for Brightspot, I went and I talked to them at their career fair. I talked to Catherine just because I wanted to get her take on product management. I wanted to understand what she does as a product manager. Even though I really wasn't trying to get a job at her company just yet, I wanted to talk to her and form that personal connection so that when I was applying for full-time positions, I would have that connection, I would have that understanding. And that summer, I did an internship with Software AG, which is my current employer. And one thing that I will recommend is if you have an internship, do your very best to knock it out of the park, because these people really will go the extra mile for you. I mean, the team that I'm currently on is the team that I was with for my internship, and they really enjoyed the work that I did. They thought I was bright, and they brought me back in a kind of new grad associate product manager position, which they didn't really do, right? So if you do well during your internships, people will spend the time and invest the time of onboarding you and bringing you on. In a COVID world, I did do so my fourth year, I only did one semester, but I did attend a lot of those career fairs, and I did the same thing in a virtual setting. You know, it's important that you go to the career fairs and sign up for those office hour slots, the 15-minute slots or whatever they had, really early, because they're going to fill up, and you got to make that personal connection as soon as possible in order to find, you know, a great job, at least through networking. I'm not saying that you can't just cold apply to jobs. You absolutely can, and you will get responses. But networking is really important, and I cannot overstate its importance for you all.
Definitely echo everything that Tal just said. I think if you think about it in terms of three types of buckets of people that you might network with, I feel like the first one that's very obvious is, again, those people that you might report to in an internship. It could be even in, if you're thinking about it in an academic sense, if you have any professors that have connections and they know what your interests are and you have a personal relationship with them, they can always help you out as well. So I think thinking to those higher up people, like I think that in my past also went to all those, you know, office hours, had people review my resumes for me before I was even applying for internships. So I think it is good to get that exposure for people who are in positions already that you're looking for. But then there's two others that I think are also kind of understated. And the second obviously is at your level. So your peers are probably doing really great things, have internship opportunities as well that they can let you know of their experiences, might even be more candid than those people that are trying to recruit you. So definitely use your peers as a resource. You never know when they could refer you to a job. Really, my current job at Smartsheet, I actually got here because I worked on a year-long project with another consultant, technical consultant over at Yext. And he was like, I think you would really love it here at Smartsheet. I think it's really got what you want. And I think you would do well here. So that's why I kind of moved over, and I never would have really known about Smartsheet either if I wasn't friends with him and if I hadn't had a great working relationship with him. So definitely don't, not count your friends and your peers at your level and maybe even at your internships. And then I would say the third thing is that I also love just keeping in touch with people who are younger than me or potentially I'm mentoring in my roles, because it really goes this both ways. They could always move on to another opportunity that you might be interested in, or you could really step into that role and give back and say, these are all my experiences and I think this would help out for you, or XYZ. And I think that that kind of networking really goes from top to bottom in my mind. And I think that it's important to, of course, use those LinkedIn connections, cold call, but also leverage the network that you already have and make sure that your relationships are strong enough that you are able to ask for a favor, or you are able to ask what their experience is, because you never know when somebody will come in handy in terms of their expertise.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I'll just touch on one thing before we move on. Sorry, Maggie. My first boss at Brightspot, she actually left the company after I was there for 4 months or so. But when she heard that I was, potentially considering another offer, she was like, "Hey, if you hate it, you can come work for me." So I completely agree. I can't overstate the importance of forming those connections with your mentors, with your peers, because they will, if you form a friendship, if you form a working relationship, they will do the world for you. And that is very important.
Thank you, guys. Just to backtrack a little bit, I'm realizing that we didn't really get into kind of what you're doing, like who you're working for, what you're doing, like who your clients are. So if you guys want to get into that briefly, like that would be awesome.
Sure, I can start off. I currently work for Smartsheet, which it's okay if you don't know what it is. I really didn't know until I worked here too. It is a collaborative work management platform. So if you think of how Google Sheets, you're able to collaborate on there, add other users, and you can kind of see updates in real time together. It's kind of like that, but on steroids. If you think about it, there's a lot more capabilities in terms of automation between your sheets. You can build reporting off of it. It's really popular for just enterprise or small business organizations that need a level of basically hierarchy between their project management processes and then maybe more at a program level, looking across all their projects and saying, okay, what are the insights? What are the automated reporting that I need to see? So my role as a solutions consultant right now is literally working with those product management program management organizations, PMOs, at other companies, and really working with them to refine their processes. So it is a little bit more consulting heavy than my previous role, where I was more on the project management side. I am now in this role, sitting down with them, working with them through their current processes, mapping that out, understanding where the areas for optimization are, and then introducing the Smartsheet product as a part of the future state solution. So I do like that part, because that part is exercising a lot more of my kind of econ soft skills and optimization seeking skills. And then more of the technical pieces are coming in, where once we actually present that final solution to them and they sign off, then, okay, we take those requirements and we actually build it out within Smartsheet. So I think it's kind of the best of both worlds in terms of project management and consulting, and then also a little bit more technical, getting in the weeds and building the solution ourselves. So that is what I do right now. Did I hit on all your questions?
Yeah, you did. Could you elaborate a little bit more on Yext as well, and kind of how the two companies are different, and like the kind of the separation between your first role and then your current role at Smartsheet?
Sure. So Yext is, and I'm trying to think about how it's changed a lot over the past couple of years. I feel like that's the thing in software, right? Your product that you're all behind your first year might totally be different your second year. You might have a totally new product. But at Yext, my role was within the consulting department as well at Yext. So we really worked on pages. So setting up websites for clients, also business to business, setting up websites for clients, controlling data integrations for them. And then a little bit later on, right before I left, was when we started diving into natural language processing and search engine optimization. So I really learned a lot of new technical hard skills at Yext because I did work directly with designers and engineers in that role in order to basically build those end results for the customers. So in that role, my main kind of points of contact were the clients, probably like marketing departments or like data departments that took care of all the data for that company. And then internally, those engineers, product team, sales team, and kind of being in the go-between there. And then separately at Smartsheet, I don't work directly with product engineers. I actually work with other solutions consultants who are also the build engineers as we're staffed on projects. So we actually don't have to code at all. We're just building within the platform. So that's, again, that distinction between building out the product as a product manager versus using the product and optimizing it for the customer as a project manager. So that's kind of where I am. So in that role, I am similar in that I'm still the go-between, but I do a little bit more building and I'm a little bit more hands-on with the product at my new role.
Cool. So I kind of do something, I kind of had the reverse career trajectory where I started with this client sort of facing work, and now I'm on the product side. So right out of college, I mentioned I started at a company called Brightspot. Brightspot is it's called a CMS, or a content management system. If you think about like WordPress and all that sort of stuff, that's their technology there. So really it's about, creating a system where you can stand up a website on top of it. And my job at Brightspot as a product manager was really more of a professional services kind of role, where I was the go-between between clients and my development team implementing Brightspot for these specific clients. And I had a bunch of clients. I had a couple Amazon projects. I had Everyday Health Group was a client of mine, AARP. So a couple big name clients here, which was fantastic experience for me, especially working with those Amazon teams. But my job there was kind of working day in, day out with those clients to understand their requirements and then translating those requirements into actionable, deliverable items for my developers to kind of work out. So at Brightspot, the biggest takeaway that I learned was not only client management, how to interact with the client, understand their use cases, understand their needs, but also how to manage a development team. Because as a product manager, you don't have direct authority over any of your developers, right? So you're just kind of working as a peer among them to kind of help them understand the use case, understand the problems of what they're trying to be fixing. So that was a great role. I really, really enjoyed my time at Brightspot. Really, all the work that I was doing there is fantastic. When Software AG reached out to me with this amazing offer, I couldn't say no, though, because it was just it was a true product management role. So in my current role at Software AG, I am a product manager on an IoT system, and IoT stands for Internet of Things. It's basically, how I think about it is like a bunch of devices need to communicate together. So for example, if you're in a factory and you have all those different machines that make stuff, they need to be communicating, because you don't want one machine breaking and then the other machine kind of still going and still doing whatever it does, right? So an IoT system kind of combines all these different it's a platform where devices can talk to each other, basically. And interestingly, at my current role at Software AG, I work on the pricing and billing and metering systems, which is really cool because it relates to my econ undergraduate degree, right? So I'm doing a lot of work understanding, the economics of, if we change the price this much, what happens, or what could we expect to happen for our profits and all that sort of stuff. So in this role, I'm a little bit more, kind of working on the product. Like Sano said, we're really iterating on the product. We do talk to customers, we do talk to clients to understand what they're expecting are, but ultimately it's my decision what gets built, what gets implemented, all that sort of stuff. So it's a really cool kind of different spectrum of what I worked on. So at Brightspot, it's mostly web development, Java backend, right? At Software AG, it's this really technologically complex IoT system with a bunch of moving parts. It's actually still based in Java though, so that's nice. But it's a really cool industry to be in. And again, I'm not technical. I coded in Java in high school, and that's about it. But you get into these things, and you learn the technology, you learn the terminology that you need to be using to communicate with all of them. So fantastic career choice. I love product management. I encourage you all to look into it, especially if you're even somewhat interested in going into tech. It's a great place to be in.
Awesome, thanks. While we're here, I think it's important to kind of talk about what your day in the life looks like, or like what your weekly work schedule looks like. So, and kind of tying in like work-life balance with this. So what does like a typical weekday look for you guys? And like, are you satisfied with that?
Yeah,
Go, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Okay.
I'll go first.
Okay.
So I'll give you my current jobs at Software AG. So Software AG is actually a German company, so it's based in Europe, but it's a massive international software development company. About 5,000 people globally, which isn't actually that big, but it's pretty big, right? So my work day actually starts at 8 a.m., which is a little bit early. Some days it's earlier than I started on 7 a few days, just because of the time zone differences there. And I don't mind doing that because I'm a morning person, and it also means I get to end my days earlier, which is nice. So in the day to day, usually what ends up happening is I have a lot of meetings kind of discussing the implementation that we're working on, or whatever is in progress, whatever my developers are working on, in addition to kind of collecting new feature requirements, new understanding, and putting together, roadmaps and grooming my backlog, understanding what features I think are coming next, and all that sort of stuff. As a product manager, we try and be as data driven as possible. That doesn't always end up happening because we don't always have the data. So, but we like to say that we're data driven. We make decisions based on the data that we're seeing. So, a lot of the day in day out is having meetings with people, understanding their problems, understanding the use cases, right? It's your job as kind of the product manager to understand the problem that your user is experiencing, and then kind of work with your development team to find a solution that works for them, right? There's this whole concept of like user stories, right? And if you dig into user stories, you can read all about them. But basically, a user story is how you start the software development process. You say, as a user, I want to XYZ because reason, right? And what that does is it gets you in the mindset of the user, and it also gets the software developer who's actually coding in the mindset of the user who will actually end up, using your product, right? All of that is to say, there's a lot of thinking, there's a lot of complex, discussions that go on. Also, customer user interviews are very important for product managers. People are very good at describing what's going wrong, and it's your job as a product manager to kind of translate that into things that you can do to improve it, right? People are also frequently giving their opinions on how to improve things, and ultimately it's your decision and your developers' decisions on how to best improve something, given that your platform and all that sort of stuff. But the kind of key thing there is when you're doing user interviews, they tell you the problems, and then you can kind of compress those, understand those, and then take those into the future. So my day-to-day is a lot of meetings. At the same point that I'm doing a lot of feature refinement, backlog grooming, understanding, thinking, critical reasoning, and then making PowerPoints and explaining why I think we should do X, Y, Z, and all that sort of stuff. So again, it's hard to say what the day-to-day of a life is as a product manager, because every day is going to be different, right? Every day you have a different stakeholder that you're managing. Some days, the marketing team will be pinging me about a certain feature that they need. Some days sales, some days finance, that they don't understand the metrics that I sent over last week, right? So it's a fun job, because every day is kind of unique, and every day you have your own set of challenges that you have to navigate. And I think that's fun, but that's just me.
I will definitely echo that. Every day looks very different for me as well. Because I am client facing and I have a bunch of different clients in different industries. For example, I might have a pharmaceutical company that is based in the UK, so I might have 8 a.m. meetings, but I also might work with large scale brands that are based in LA, so I'll also have late meetings. So I definitely have a range of different meeting times every single day. I will say that something I do like about my current job, though, is that I am able to state those preferences over to my manager and leadership saying, I'm a morning person, give me all the UK clients, I can do it, versus on these days, I don't have UK meetings, so I'm happy to go on those West Coast clients and if they can meet on these days. So I do like that I have that kind of flexibility and input. I was just taking a quick look at my calendar to see kind of what I blocked my day off for. But I think definitely a lot of meetings with clients. I think that something that I really like having, and I'm sure everybody else as well, is I don't like having meetings that are meaningless, right? So especially for the meetings that I'm running for clients, I do like having that autonomy of saying, okay, I'm the person that's setting the agenda and I know exactly what we're going into to cover for this. And I like that having that sense of ownership and responsibility, which is why I think this is a good role for me. Whereas some people might like to be on the other receiving end where they want someone to tell them the agenda. And so I do really like that I have that kind of, I guess, authority or responsibility. And then I also tend to also have enough time to have working blocks, which I love, because in my role right now, I am customer facing, but then kind of the second piece of it is for projects that I've already gathered the requirements, I am part of the building team. So I have enough time to kind of recharge, not talk to anyone, heads down, play some Spotify and just knock some things out in terms of building out the product and building out the solution. And that's something I actually didn't get in my previous role. So I really do love that at Smartsheet right now, that I kind of have the best of both worlds of I am able to exercise the fact that I can be organized and I can keep a team on track, but I also kind of like having that time to recharge and not have meetings from 9 to 5, 5 days a week. So in terms of the day-to-day, yeah, I think it would be a pretty good split between client meetings and talking nonstop, and then just being heads down and building.
Cool. And then a quick question before we hop into the student Q&A. Are you guys both remote right now, or are you working in person?
My position is actually fully remote, so
Okay.
I don't think we'll ever go back in. But it is interesting. I actually have an on-site coming up. So for customers who do want us to come on-site, they actually can request that. So we do a little bit of travel, but there's no necessity to go into an office. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me as well, I'm fully remote right now. There is an office in Reston. I'm in Northern Virginia here, so I have been into the office once. And one of the reasons I'm enjoying working for this company is the potential of traveling to Germany and all these cool places is there. So our team is looking to get together in Bulgaria sometime soon, which is very exciting for me. So if you join an international company, maybe there's the benefit of travel in a post-COVID world when travel comes back, I guess.
Cool. So students, if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to either unmute yourselves and ask them, or you can send them in the chat. Okay, just feel free to drop them in the chat whenever, but we can dive into the interview process for how you guys got your first roles. So what kinds of questions were asked, how many stages were there in your interview process? And then a fun question that I always like to ask is do you have any interviews fails or any funny stories that have come from interviews?
I'm really trying to think back because I went straight from my internship into my first job. So I'm trying to think back to my internship. But I think we had 3 rounds. I think the first round I actually had at UVA, or maybe I had 2 rounds. Definitely the first round was at UVA, which was really nice. It was in, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of the hall, Bryant Hall? No, wait, is that right? Okay, Bryant Hall. And I had an interview there, which was really convenient. I think I just went in between classes and just picked a time slot. So that was great with Yext. And that I think was just purely behavioral. So I feel like those are relatively easy to prep for. You kind of know what kind of anecdotes you need to prepare beforehand, try to make sure they're flexible. But I remember being really nervous for that. And then the second round was a little bit more technical in terms of the kinds of questions they were asking. It wasn't really coding necessarily for us since that's not required of the project manager role at Yext, but I think they also changed the name. It's engagement manager now. But originally it would be more like logic type questions, which I think really econ majors are suited for, since we do have to do a lot of that logicking out in our own projects and our own classes. So I remember that being the more technical piece of it. And then there was also a quote unquote case. It wasn't like a management consulting case where you have to crunch numbers or anything, but it was more relevant to the product that we would be working with directly. For example, in software development, you usually have a QA period, or you have a requirements gathering period in the very beginning. So it was kind of talking through what is the product implementation methodology. And then depending on what you kind of picked up from that quick session that Yext was giving, how can you basically synthesize that and apply that to the case given in front of you? So it was kind of interesting. It was totally different from like a Capital One or like a McKinsey like consulting specific case, but it was more of it was still a case in the sense that you still had to apply information that they gave to you in that kind of product and software realm to the problem.
And then Sano, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just
Sorry.
to follow up, so for the job offer after the internship, was that kind of immediately following the internship, or was there a delay before you got that, like the full-time job offer?
I think they told me pretty quickly. Like I think I went back to school, and then at one of the back to school events when Yext just came onto campus, the recruiter was like, "Hey, you have a few minutes to chat before this comm school career chat," and I was like, "Sure." And she gave me the offer then, and I did end up not saying yes right on the spot. I did continue to just recruit as well, just to make sure I knew what I was, what I was signing up for, and that I didn't feel like I hadn't given my all to other opportunities that I was looking at. But I ultimately ended up going back to Yext and really enjoyed it. I love the people there, which I'm sure everyone from Yext says if you've talked to them. But I think it was a really great starting point for me in terms of the level of responsibility they really give you in that role.
Yeah, so my interview process is a little bit more standard because I wasn't coming from an internship, but the first thing that you'll do is a phone screen interview with a recruiter, which is really just 30 minutes, and they just want to get to know you. Maybe they'll ask you a few behavioral questions. Behavioral questions they're not easy, but they're just about you, right? They just want to get to know you and understand how you think, what you could bring to the company, right? So there's nothing really to stress over, right? The thing that is more stressful for a product manager interview is the product case that Sano was talking about. And you have to understand that these are like, you're in a business role, right? So your understanding of what the business needs and what the business use cases are will dictate how you perform in this role. So I think for Brightspot, they asked me, what was the question? It was an online or a camping equipment manufacturer wants to develop an app that will be used for free to help people find campsites, right? And that's kind of a standard. It's like, and then they go into design the app, right? And then you launch into this whole kind of process where you're thinking through the business use cases. You're thinking through, okay, if I'm a user of this app, I want to do what? And then you go into those user stories, you generate all those information, you think through all the designs, what you would need to see, how the app would look, what the technical limitations are, what APIs you need to call into, what maybe a mapping service you need to do. And then it's also important to think about like the business use case, right? So you're presented with this product and you're tasked with like building this product, right? But at the end of the day, it has to serve a function for the business, right? So for example, that use case that I just mentioned, where you're having this camping manufacturer wanting to do a free app, what's the purpose of that? Well, it's to sell, right? It's to sell and convert people into paying customers, right? So the free app is basically the top of a sales funnel, right? Now, everything I just said may not make sense to you, and that's okay. That was just a high-level overview of kind of a product case or what you can expect with that. I will, again, plug Rocketblocks. They do a lot of product case interviews that are really good practice, and they kind of go through the design, and they also have a bunch of behavioral interview questions that you can practice on if you're worried about those. One other thing, and I pulled this out, this is a fantastic, it's backwards. Cracking the PM Interview is a fantastic book that goes through all sorts of different product case interviews for a bunch of different companies. It's got like Google, Microsoft, Apple in here. So you really get the whole kind of picture of how to interview. Interviews are hard because you have to prep for interviews, which is a shame, but I mean, that's how you get the job, right? If I didn't read that book and if I didn't prepare using rocket blocks and all that sort of stuff, I don't think I would have gotten the position at Bright Spot. So I definitely recommend, doing your research ahead of time and understanding what you're going to be asked. And don't be afraid, if you get to the second round past your recruiter phone screen, don't be afraid to ask your recruiter, like, hey, what can I expect of this interview? Is this going to be behavioral? Is this going to be technical? And then they'll usually tell you, it's going to be a mix of behavioral. You're going to do a product case. We're going to ask you to design something like that. So I definitely recommend, like, if you get an interview, make sure you give it your all preparing for that interview, because you're trying to get a job, right? So treat this like you're getting a job, right? Treat this like, it's your 9 to 5, and study and prepare, and that'll go a long way. As to funny interviewing stories, so one of my first internship interviews, it was with Cvent, actually in Bryant Hall, right overlooking the football stadium. I got asked a question that I had not prepared for at all. This isn't when I was a student and I didn't know I had to prepare for interviews, right? So I had just completely pulled an answer out of the hat. Like, I just pulled something out, and the more I talked about it, the more I realized, like, oh, that was a really good answer. I think the question was, what's your favorite app and why? And I picked Robinhood just on a whim, because I looked at my phone and I had Robinhood right there. And if you don't know, it's a stock trading app. But Robinhood represented a really great example of this, because it showed like this freemium model where, this app was the first to go free, allowing people to trade stocks for free. And they kind of identified the market use case that they were targeting, which was these people that didn't want to pay to trade stocks, right? And they were kind of the first one to do that. So it ended up being a really great answer to an interview. And I still use Robinhood to this day for the answer to that interview question, because it's a great example. But of course, that will all come with knowledge and with understanding of product use cases and all that sort of stuff. So again, interviewing, make sure you prepare. It's the bottom line.
I totally relate to that unexpected question, or like kind of just a question that, like, that there is going to be an unexpected question, but you just don't know which direction it's going to take. Because for Smartsheet, I had something very similar at the very last level. We had more rounds for Smartsheet, but probably because it's industry hire and not right out of college. But it went all the way up to the director. You have to talk to the director of consulting and make sure you guys are on good terms, or it's just kind of a final check. But he asked me, I love to ask interviewees, what have they been learning during quarantine and COVID? And I was like, oh, I've done a lot of things. And I was trying to think, but I was like, oh, I've been cooking. And he was like, everyone says that. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I was like, I'm not getting this job, but he meant it in a good way. Like, he was like, yeah, it seems like everyone just spending a lot of time at home, and it seems like everyone panics. And that's the first thing they say. So definitely think about, what you're working on, what you're learning, what your favorite book is. Like, those kinds of unexpected questions will definitely come up. And it's always good to have a backup.
Great. So I think we should move on to just like a final kind of wrap up. Do you guys have any final pieces of advice to share with our students? And you can also talk about kind of like two very unrelated questions, but final piece of advice for student and kind of where you see yourselves going next, and how you guys will want to grow in your careers or in this industry.
My final piece of advice is to definitely utilize the eco. I think that obviously the eco, and then also just the other career center resources. I think especially when maybe you talk to other friends who might not be going to UVA, or just friends from home. I was always shocked at how many resources are just available to us as students at UVA. So definitely take advantage of them. Like, try to get your resume reviewed as many times by as many different people as possible. Feel free to LinkedIn network, cold call, see if Tal and I are on LinkedIn, like, connect with us and ask us a question. I think we've all kind of been there, and we're all kind of expecting it from that alum perspective. So definitely make use of the UVA resources that you have is my biggest piece of advice. And then I think in terms of where I see myself going, I do really like my current role, and something that I do like specifically about why I kind of moved over to Smartsheet was because it is a little bit larger of a company, and there is a little bit more of a mature structure in terms of here are the expectations of you as somebody in this role, and here's what the expectations are in a senior role, in a manager role, in a director role. And I think that's something that is very important to me in terms of being able to map out what are the next steps I need to take, since I always like looking ahead and just seeing what I need to check off on my side. And so I think I'm looking forward to just staying at Smartsheet for a little bit and just climbing up, becoming a senior. And then from there, I think I'll have to make a decision on if I do want to be more in the weeds and stay technical and stay more of an individual contributor at that more complex level, or if I want to manage people, because that's something that people don't know either. You don't have to always be a manager. There are also opportunities where you can be more complex and dive into something as a subject matter expert in something that you really love, or you could become a manager for people who are doing that role. So definitely two different ways to kind of explore. And I don't think I'm quite at that crossroads yet, but something I'm cognizant of.
Yeah, I'll echo that. If you have not met with Miss Jones yet, I highly encourage you to do that because she is very, very helpful. I mean, even just doing resume reviews with Miss Jones was very helpful as I was trying to apply the job. And even if you're not a fourth year and you're not looking to get a full-time job, meet with her anyway. She can help you. I mean, Miss Jones even like recommended a font that I use on my resume. Miss Jones is an incredible source of knowledge that you guys should definitely utilize. The ECO is a fantastic resource that I highly recommend you all utilize to the fullest extent, because you are econ majors, and I find a lot of people don't utilize the ECO, and I think you guys should. But yeah, if you're interested in product management and you know, like me, that you want to do something in the tech industry, you don't want to do a traditional finance role, you come out of econ doing management consultants or something like that, because there's no coursework on product management, you really have to just, carve your own path here. If you want to learn more about this, I have a bunch of resources. I'll run through them real quick. Inspired by Marty Kagan is a fantastic book. I actually don't love it all that much because it's not very practical, but it is a great high-level overview of product management and how to build products. A podcast called rocketship.fm is fantastic as well. They do a really cool series on product failures, so that you can understand exactly what goes on and makes some product fails. Like I forget the examples, but there's a couple of examples like that. And then there's a bunch of different, online coursework. I think UVA actually offers some product management coursework through Coursera, if I remember correctly. And I did those as well. You really, if you're interested in this kind of realm, I encourage you to spend the hours and researching and doing a lot, because this is a really great area to be in. One other last thing that I'll plug, I originally said that this is a kind of mid-career transition role, and that's true. But you're seeing a lot more emphasis being placed on new grad product managers. So there's a lot of what they call associate product manager kind of rotational programs that are out there at big tech companies. And I highly encourage you to apply to those and get into the product management world. No, I'll send a link to both rocketship.fm and APM list, which is the compilation of a bunch of different new grad product manager positions as well. But for me, the next thing, so I'm gonna stick it out at Software AG. Obviously, I left my company after only 9 months, which is not ideal. You should ideally stay for at least a year on your first position, so take that from me. But unfortunately, I didn't, because it was just too good an offer. I couldn't refuse it. So I'm going to stick it out in Software AG, do the best I can. Move up, just like Sano was saying, and see where it goes. I think for me, my internships were kind of in the startup world, and right now I'm working in the big corporate world. It's massive company. So I'd love to get back into the startup world. Startups are a little bit different because they're a lot more fast-paced. There's a lot to do in startups, and they're fun for that reason. But right now I'm kind of enjoying having an established company to work on, and help me grow in my career. But eventually I think I'd like to pivot back into startups because they're fun. There's a lot of work to do, and they're a lot of fun there. But yeah, let me drop the links in chat to the things that I just mentioned.
Great, thank you guys.